Welcome to the first ever virtual HR Innovation Forum, proudly presented by Deloitte Canada. And thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Nicole Almond. I'm the president of Enactus Canada, and on behalf of our office and Deloitte Canada, I am pleased to welcome all of you to the fourth annual HR Innovation Forum. We really couldn't be more thrilled to be able to provide this platform for the many student leaders in our network to connect, share, and learn from each other, and the HR representatives from our amazing partner companies, including, of course, Deloitte Canada. We're going to be beginning the forum today with our panel of amazing HR leaders who are going to share their personal leadership stories and insights. And then we're going to move to the Q&A period, where our participants joining us from across the country will have an opportunity to join the discussion. The webinars this week have been pretty amazing, and I'm sure today will be no different. And I want to once again thank Deloitte Canada for this opportunity to connect for today's forum. We hope it's going to encourage open dialogue and establish connections and provide an opportunity to discuss new ideas and some forward thinking. As one of Canada's leading professional services firms, Deloitte Canada combines industry insight with a deep understanding of today's local and global business challenges to give their clients the intelligent, practical, and principled solutions they need to resolve today's challenges and anticipate tomorrow's. So it's really fitting that they would support today's forum as we discuss resiliency in the face of uncertainty. The ongoing COVID-19 crisis really has disrupted the way that we're living our everyday lives. It's left many Canadians either out of work or feeling uncertain about their future. And among these Canadians are post-secondary students who are entering the workforce during a drastic economic downturn. So I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. And today's forum will help discuss how human resource professionals and their recruitment efforts are being affected by this, and how you can show resiliency in the face of uncertainty. And we know that when it comes to resiliency, Enactus students kind of are top of the pack there. So get some new tips. And once again, thank you to Deloitte Canada for making this possible. And to help lead today's discussion, I'd now like to introduce our discussion leader and moderator for this morning, Kula Vasilopoulos, District Vice President, Western Canada, Robert Half. She joined Robert Half's Calgary location 22 years ago, and over the course of her career has held numerous leadership positions. In her current role, she's responsible for Robert Half's Western Canada and Latin America operations. Prior to joining Robert Half, she spent over 10 years in the hospitality industry, and outside of work, Kula is all about enjoying time unwinding with the family in the mountains and taking vacations anywhere hot and sunny when the world isn't in lockdown. So a little bit about Kula, and please join me in welcoming her to start today's forum. Kula?
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Nicole. Hello, everyone. I'm really proud to be here representing Robert Half today, and excited to moderate the discussion with a panel of amazing HR leaders. As Nicole mentioned, the topic for today's webinar is resiliency in the face of uncertainty, which is really something I've been thinking a lot about myself these last 9 weeks, not just as a business leader, but as a mother of a daughter starting university in the fall. What does the future hold for us, for her, and for all of you? Particularly those just starting their careers, and how do we navigate so many unknowns? The answer, if you know how to define and approach it, is resiliency. Now, resiliency sounds like a tough word, like something absolute and unshakable in the face of challenges, but true resiliency is actually quite the opposite. Real resilience is about being flexible and adaptable. It's about recognizing any challenges you come up against, not as mountains to overcome, but as something you learn from, you grow from, something that transforms you and pushes you to be better. Think of uncertainty as opportunity and resiliency as the ability to see that as an advantage. So today, as we discuss how the world of work and finding work is shifting, remember that your ability to embrace change and pivot into it early in your career ultimately sets the tone for your success throughout it and in every stage that follows. Now is your chance. And I really feel that this generation is so much better equipped than we were. To help us dive deeper into the discussion, I'm really pleased to introduce our HR leadership panel. So please give us all a wave as I introduce you. So Brian Convery, National Director, Early Talent Acquisition with RBC. Brian is an accomplished, results-driven executive professional with 30 years of diversified and progressive experience, spanning a wide range of industries and disciplines, both in the private and public sectors around the globe. As Director, Early Talent Acquisition with a focus on attraction and engagement at RBC, Brian leads the Canada campus recruitment teams to attract, engage, recruit, and mentor the right student talent at one of the world's leading financial institutions. Brian also sits on a number of post-secondary advisory boards and holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration, Management, and Operations from the University of Hartford, Connecticut. Marie Artem, Vice President, Global Talent Acquisition with Enterprise Holdings. As the Vice President, Global Talent Acquisition for Enterprise Holdings, supporting the Enterprise, Alamo, and National brands, Marie is responsible for company-wide strategies and practices whose global hires include more than 9,000 university graduates every year. Marie also manages strategic partner relationships and collaborates with leadership to develop and implement programs to meet their workforce needs. Marie is an alumni of Purdue University and began her career in the company's nationally recognized management training program soon after. Over the next several years, she worked her way up through operations, human resources, and recruiting. Marie took over talent acquisition and responsibilities in 2000 and gained global oversight when named Vice President Talent Acquisition in September 2010. In addition, Marie recently served as President of the Board of Directors for the National Association of Colleges and Employers and is also current President of the Board for Food Outreach, a St. Louis-based nonprofit. Thanks, welcome, Marie. Ryan Serville. Ryan is a talent acquisition specialist with Walmart Canada. Ryan graduated from the University of Guelph with a Bachelor of Commerce in HR and has been working in the talent acquisition field for the last 5 years. Ryan has been with Walmart for over 2.5 years, supporting a combination of head office, field roles, as well as helping lead the DARE graduate program. This is Ryan's second year leading the partnership between Enactus and Walmart Canada. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, guys.
Mehek Shoaib, Manager, Canadian College Campus Recruitment with Scotiabank. Mehek is passionate about recruiting and developing top talent, which will cater to the culture at Scotiabank. With a background in retail banking, she is focused on enhancing Scotiabank's commitment to elevating the customer experience by hiring the best talent. Welcome, Mehek.
Hi.
So thank you all for being here today. I know our audience is keen to hear your views on the topic, so we're going to dive right in. So Brian and Marie, I'm going to start with you. Let's start with an easy one. How have your recruitment efforts been affected by COVID-19? So Brian, I'm going to have you start us off.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. Yeah, so obviously COVID-19 has affected all of us in many different ways, and having the recruitment efforts for summer specifically interrupted somewhere about beginning of March was something we all experienced. We all ended up having to retreat home to our home offices, to leave different places we were traveling to or had planned to travel to. And so overall, we quickly had to pivot and learn what was the best way to still stay connected with the idea that we were still going to be employing students for the summer. So for us, we quickly worked with our operational folks internally. We contacted all the schools and we started to flip things to a more virtual approach. Online interviews, video interviews, phone calls, you name it. We really wanted to make sure that we were reaching out and letting students that we would know that we're still open for business and that we would just be connecting with them slightly differently. So we engaged in technology, but we didn't forget about the human touch. We really wanted to make sure that those in process or those that were actually planning to meet us the following week or a week later somewhere, that we were still here and that we can probably take a couple extra days to get ourselves organized, but that we would come back out and and be available to make that recruitment process seamless and hopefully seamless for the students. So yeah, so that's really what we did. I think one of our biggest things too is just being transparent. None of us had ever experienced or even are experienced in this space and what we're all experiencing today. So we wanted to recognize our vulnerabilities and our human side of things, just to say, we're in this together, we'll work through it and make sure that the students felt a sense of belonging in the process, and that we would get through it together. So I was really pleased with how we dealt with the situation, and I think we learned a lot along the way that's going to be applied for future recruitment activities. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that that's so key, being vulnerable, being human, really start things off nicely and create trust a little bit quicker. So thank you so much. Marie, over to you.
Hi, thanks, and hello, everybody. So I get to represent the industry that probably was most impacted on the panel. As you can imagine, being in travel, tourism, hospitality, we saw things change in our business in a way we had never seen before. It was unprecedented. So literally overnight, our business kind of stopped. So in the 25 years in the recruiting world I've had with enterprise in some way, shape, or form, we found ourselves in a different place and had to figure out how we were going to work through that. And that was beyond just recruitment, but obviously for me and for our team, that was at the front of it. So when you think about it, the ways that it affected our recruiting, some are probably more common sense, like, we were in a place where we saw such a sharp business decline so quickly. We are customer facing, which had its own issues around safety and concern for our customers and our employees. So we did have to take a step back and make some difficult choices for our hiring. So we had to pause our hiring, pause some start dates, rethink our internship programs, all things that are uncomfortable and difficult and certainly not the way we do business as an organization. So I think Brian's point is so well taken, in that we really approached it with transparency and honesty. And whether that was talking to you all as students, to those influencers on campus, to just our audiences in general, to understand where we were, where we hope to be. But this has allowed us really to kind of press the reset button and rethink how we need to do this in the future, and how we're going to approach not just recruitment, but onboarding and development and things that are so key to our culture. And, so while we had to take a pause that we were not crazy about, and, had to make some changes to people's outlooks for their summer, or even when they start their career with us, we hope that we were able to find some ways to then tie in some value, help them help us through all of it. And, we understand that, by doing all this and understanding what we need to do to get better, that we can come out of this stronger and better in the long run. Thankfully, we're starting to see things tick in the right direction slowly. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to then get back on track and do things even more, strategically better for everyone involved.
Yeah, well done. Thank you so much. Reinventing ourselves, pivoting, innovation, all of those behaviors that we had to adapt very quickly, I think are also key to this audience, because they're going to need to understand how to be able to utilize those skills in the future. So thank you so much. So before we move on to the next question, I want to pause for a minute, and we want to hear from our audience. So I'm going to throw up a quick poll. So let us know if your career has been affected by COVID-19. So have you lost your job, or are you finding it harder to find a job? So I'd like you to click on the answer that applies to you and hit submit. Not surprising. 69% of individuals have had their employment situation been affected by COVID-19. You're not alone. But hopefully some of the things that we're going to talk about today will help you as organizations are starting to rehire, or maybe even are hiring today, because I'm certainly seeing that in the recruiting world. Okay, so over to Ryan and Mehek. How can students be connecting with recruiters to build their network during this new normal and respecting social distancing? So Mehek, let's start with you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's actually a really great question. And some of the different channels that you can really utilize to connect with recruiters is attending virtual sessions. So keep a lookout for your career centers. This is a great time to, really showcase your brand, get to know the team in a lifetime setting, and be able to get more insight on the organization's cultures and values and see what they have to offer you. LinkedIn is huge. Reach out to recruiters. It's a great way to show interest. Ask for virtual coffee chats. I was big on coffee chats when, pre-COVID, like I need any excuse to have one, but now, really go towards the virtual aspect of it. If you already met a recruiter on campus prior, then send them a text, send them an email. If you are meeting someone new and you want to get a coffee chat with them, send a short, simple message on LinkedIn. And I'm sure they would be empathetic during this time and be open to having one with you, right? So those are just some of the channels that I've been doing as well, and my team has been kind of utilizing to connect with students also.
Excellent, great advice. Social networking via virtual is so critical, and coffee chats are now kind of the new norm. So don't be hesitant to do that. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
So yeah, so just to really echo some of Mehek's points, especially during these times more than ever, I would also recommend continuing these practices. Hopefully, when things go back to normal, but like she mentioned, it's critical to really leverage social media outlets, build connections, update your profile. Companies are continuously using these platforms to really communicate information, to pipeline and recruit talent during these times. At the same time, I think it's really important as well to take advantage of communication and video platforms like Zoom, like Skype. Like Mehek mentioned again, many companies are still offering coffee chats. I for one know that Walmart's holding info sessions. So really be proactive, schedule time with willing recruiters, for that time, and also really connect with employers through different channels, outlets. This could be, company websites, this could be external partners, be up to date. Companies are sharing job opportunities, graduate program announcements. It's becoming this season. So really, companies are leveraging technology in all different ways, and students more than ever can really take advantage of this.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you so much. All right, so this one's going to be for Brian and Mehek. So if you're still hiring new talent, what advice would you give related to the virtual interview process? So Brian, I'm going to ask you this one first.
Sure, absolutely. So I think before even diving right into the virtual interview process, it's about your social media profile, sort of what's out there that describes who you are. Unfortunately, to the points brought up earlier by my colleagues here too, it's not that we're not running into you, we're not seeing you at a coffee shop, we're not meeting you on campus. So some of those natural collisions that would already happen with us as recruiters is challenged by this new structure. So one of the things I've been talking to many of the students about is, really focusing in on first your profile and on social media, calling out who you are, being okay with sharing out your differences and what makes you unique, because that's what attracts recruiters to you, beyond just your degree, your grades, and your school. So first I would say, really focus on looking at that. Take some time, take a bit of time to look at your profiles. Are they consistent? Do they represent your brand? Do they make you feel comfortable with how you're representing yourself? And then you're prepared for the actual interview itself. And for recruiters, it's easier to find out maybe something about you that can help open up that conversation with the virtual interviewing process. As far as getting ready for it, there's a couple, people do different things with virtual interviewing. Some are face-to-face where we're actually talking like we are today. And that's, I feel, very much a little bit more human interaction, and you can gauge body language, you can talk, you can talk out loud, describe different scenarios with recruiters. That's almost like sitting across the table in some ways. The other way is where you have to pre-record yourself for an interview. And there are many people that use those techniques as well. I find myself that I'm challenged by that sometimes. But what I've learned to do is to put even like a photo behind the computer of someone that I can talk to. It sounds kind of silly or maybe a bit out there, but just having a focus on something outside of just the camera going 1, 2, 3, and you're on. If you have something that you can stare at, whether it's a nice scene of a beach somewhere or it's a person that you talk to often, at least that gives you your opportunity to kind of focus in on those things when it's a pre-recorded. And then I think key tips would be take your time. I know myself, I'm a fast talker. I grew up in New York, and I apologize for sometimes I talk too fast. So slow down, take a breath, be okay with answering the questions, and just be yourself. Again, if you can kind of build in sort of an ecosystem around how that interview is taking place, and whether it's a friendly face or something to stare at to kind of keep you going. Just some thoughts that I find have helped me even with connecting with people in that sort of scenario. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right. So Mahek.
Yeah, Brian, great tips. I would kind of say something along the same lines. You know, having your camera on really helps with the engagement piece. Make sure your technology is working beforehand. Eliminate all distractions. Number 2, like kind of an obvious one, like, you know, be on time. If you're having an interview that's in different time zones, make sure you double check that. And I would say practice is huge, right? Like I always say, practice with your sibling. They're always going to be honest with you. If you can't practice with your sibling, practice with a friend, or even Zoom has this new feature where you're able to record yourself, right? So really brush up on those storytelling skills and interview skills. And I would also say match the interviewer's energy. If you are seeing someone that's a little bit more serious during the interview, match that energy. If someone is a little bit more casual or laid back, again, match it, right? And then I would also say just have a great attitude, because attitude is contagious. And then after the interview, send them a follow-up email. You know, thank you so much for taking the time meeting with me. I know I personally really like that. So yeah, I think those would be some good tips.
That's great. You know, interviewing virtually can be a real challenge. And I think, you know, it's so easy to get distracted with what's going on around you, that practice is key. So great tips to you both. Thank you so much. All right, so now for Marie and Ryan, what can students be proactively doing now to ensure that they will stand out amongst their peers when companies return to, I'm going to say, normal hiring practices? Because I, you know, define normal. But Marie, let's hear from you first. What are your thoughts?
Great. Yeah, we've gone with, instead of the new normal, it's the now normal, because it seems to change on a regular basis, right? So one of the things that I think, and there's a lot you could do, one thing that comes to mind for me is, you know, how do you find ways to stay and be engaged? So developing new skills. There's tools like LinkedIn Learning, and there's a lot of other tools out there where you can continue to identify what are skills that, you know, maybe they're soft skills or life skills versus, you know, they may be technical skills, but take advantage of a lot of those virtual tools to continue to develop things that are going to help you be better prepared, whether that's for the interview or whether it's for your resume or just, you know, to help you with a role or a new role. Especially as you look ahead, and, you know, kind of along the same lines of developing the skills, gain experiences. So are there ways to virtually volunteer, to do some things that can allow you to still kind of build that resume, even though you might be in a different situation than you're used to and not able to do it? So obviously Enactus is the perfect example of that, and the work that you're doing here. So how do you continue to gain experiences and build skills by what you're doing every day as part of your team?
Great, so true. I love the idea of the virtual volunteering. And I think that as companies start looking at, their now normal hiring practices, there will be a lot of question to people. How did you manage through, the COVID-19 issue? And so I think looking for how students and potential hires are talking about ways that they adjusted, pivoted, as I mentioned earlier, ways that they were being creative and innovative, but giving back, I think, is such a key thing. So great tip. Thank you. Ryan, over to you.
Yeah, so I think, students, during this time and, graduates, this is a good opportunity for you to really connect and engage with brands through social media, through websites, really understand what cultures of the companies are that you're interested in. It's always a bonus from a recruiter and hiring manager standpoint when candidates have some familiarity with the company. At the same time, be comfortable with technology and being on camera. So it may be a little unorthodox compared to traditional face-to-face interviews, but companies are conducting more interviews from an efficiency standpoint, and it's something that will be continuously used afterwards as well. And lastly, I think really do your homework on companies, specific roles that you're interested in. Take a look at employees who are currently in that role that you want. If you want to be a project manager, see how they got there, what companies they work for, what their career path looked like prior to being in that position. And I think, this is a really good opportunity to, see what career paths you're interested in. And, taking a look at the companies and the profiles, will really help, kind of clear that path and, that path that you want to take.
Excellent. Some really great tips. Making sure that your brand is also up to date and how you want to be represented, personally and professionally, I think is also so key. So let's just see if our audience is doing anything to really make sure that they're ready for when life returns to the now normal. I love that. I think I'm gonna take that. So audience, you should see another quick poll pop up on your screen. So are you currently completing any online courses, workshops, or other learning platforms to stay career ready? So let's go ahead and give it a vote. Think about it. We'll give it a minute and see what the survey comes back with. Great. Well, there's a huge percentage of you, almost all, are actually, doing something to continue to, I think, support your learning. One of the things that I might add on, and I know it was covered from some of our panelists, was, following things in LinkedIn. I think you'll see a lot of companies and organizations are offering webinars. I think that these are great opportunities to take the time to continue to just add to your arsenal of knowledge. So great, very good. So finally, before we open the forum to some questions from the group, we're going to have one more question, and this one's going to be for all of the panelists. So I'll sort of tee you up before we're ready. But basically, this one is, and it's a good one. What is one piece of advice you would give to students as it relates to entering the workforce during times of uncertainty? So Marie, let's start with you.
Thank you. I'm glad to go first on this one because I'm sure by the end it'll be like what everybody else said. So the first thing that came to mind with this question is to be flexible and open-minded. Obviously, I think most organizations are navigating the same uncertainty you are. So, I think having flexibility in how you look at opportunities, how you look at organizations and what to expect on day one and as you go forward, I think flexibility is going to be key because I think, as we navigate them together, we'll get through it and come out in a great place on the other end.
Oh, yep, there we go. I knew I was going to do that once. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's move on now to Ryan.
Yeah, so what I've been telling students over the years, and obviously take it with a grain of salt. So for some of the students, you're going to get that job that you want, right out of university or college. However, for the majority of students, that's not going to be the case. So it's important, whatever industry that you're interested in, to be familiar with the industry players and identify what companies are going to get you where you want to be. What are those companies that are going to help build your work experience? And give you those critical skills that are going to be stepping stones where you want to be. So, talking a little bit, flexibility, being open-minded is something that's really going to help, like I said, entering the workforce.
Excellent. So true. Thank you. Very good. Now let's move over to Mahak.
Hi, so my advice kind of can be related both to students that have entered the workforce during this time or, will enter the workforce later on. I would say having a high AOO is super important, and that stands for attitude, ownership, and opportunity. Again, this is embedded in our DNA at Scotiabank. Attitude, again, is very contagious. If you're, getting beat down, you're stressed, you're going to let your attitude affect, and then also it's going to bring other people down, right? You can't win all the time, but 90% is how you react to losing. So being upbeat, being constructive during this time is, critical in modeling good behavior. And then relatively, if you're winning, use that to fire up everyone else too. Ownership would stand for, putting your hand up more for, opportunity would be putting your hand up more for opportunities, getting more exposure to different business lines, and really learning new skills, right? And the third one is ownership, is taking accountability for the work that you're doing. So, if you kind of messed up, take ownership of that. And if you have done great work, then also be able to tell your success stories, right? So I think having a high AOO will truly let you excel in both your personal and professional life.
Excellent. Great advice. Thank you. And then finally, Brian.
Sure. So some great advice from my colleagues here. Absolutely. The things that come to mind for me, especially in this, what was the word that you used? Not new.
Now normal.
I wrote that down, Maria. I'm definitely going to give you credit for that one for sure. That's a good one. When I think about the now normal, three things come to mind for me when I talk to what I would advise students here today. One is to have creativity. This is a time when we're all in this together and we don't know what we don't know, and there's opportunities to really dig into that and really bring your creative mindset to the table. The other thing is I always talk about is learning. So I think this is an opportunity to learn a lot, whether it's the job itself, how to interact, skills that you can develop, human skills that you're going to pull in that you might not have focused on as much before. So learn. And when I say learn, I also tell people to make mistakes and make lots of mistakes as long as you learn from those mistakes, because you're exploring, you're learning, and when learning comes mistakes, and stronger leaders make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. And then finally, I'd say have perseverance, because perseverance is something we all need right now to get through this. I know many of us are facing, I know myself, I'm going into week 10 at home, and there's days where you have good days and bad days. And so having perseverance in the workplace and being able to say, you know what, I'm kind of having an off day today, or it's okay not to be okay. I mean, that's important. And I think recognizing that part and also sharing with your managers and people that you're working with that, I've done it recently. I'm like, hey, I'm not on my A game today. Someone else can lead this meeting, kind of thing. That's the reality we're in, right? This is not this is not a situation that we've experienced, any of us, before, and you're going to have those days. So have a lot of focus on that perseverance and just be okay with sharing, how you're doing with things and how you're actually coping with the current pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's exceptional advice from all of our panelists. So really appreciate that. Having spent 22 years in the recruiting world, this is a question that, we get from so many individuals. And, I would say, if I were to add any comments, You know, I think being innovative, which ties into what Brian was saying about being creative, that is so important. And I know, especially this generation has great ideas and some amazing ideas. And sometimes I feel that maybe they're hesitant, and maybe you're hesitant to share them upline. And I would say, you know, don't be afraid. Have a voice and really be able to share what the value would be. So I think that would be one. And then the other one would be authentic. Again, you know, that almost ties into what everybody was saying. But when you're authentic, it allows people to see who you are. And that allows you to, I think, remove any barriers and really be the best version of yourself that you can be. And, you know, be open and be open to trust others. And I think what'll happen is that will create a bond of trust even quicker. And then, you know, have faith. You know, you will say through your entire professional career, this too shall pass. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have highlights of your career. You're going to have real, not highlights. I would call them downlights or lowlights, like my hair is lowlights right now. And you're just going to need to dig deep to get through. You'll only be able to do that if you utilize the support around you, friends, peers, family, colleagues. And I think what this pandemic is maybe teaching all of us, hopefully, is that it's okay to be open and to be, you know, sharing how we're feeling. So I think that's so key. So thank you all so much for sharing all of those thoughts with us. So I know our audience has been patient. I'm seeing lots of questions coming up. So I do want to open it up to the questions. So if you haven't already put a question into the Q&A, and remember, put them in the Q&A, not the chat. I am pretty good technically, but I don't think I can toggle both very well. So, you know, if you put them into the Q&A, we're going to do our very best to get to all of them. So here we go. All right, I'm just going to actually kind of start from the top and do my best to move through them. So, hi panelists. As a finance student, I lost my internship due to COVID-19. What are the things I can do to learn skills and experience alternative to a finance leadership? So maybe I will throw this question to Marie. Just in the interest of time, I think I'll just sort of pick who might, you know, no preference, but Marie, over to you.
And I might pass the baton to someone in the banking industry that would have more finance interns than Enterprise does. But I think overall, it's a lot of what we talked about before. Where can you find those skills virtually? Where can you tap into networks or find new networks that can help you to stay connected? You know, overall, I think in general, that would be my advice for anyone who's in that situation. So I know for us, the internships that we weren't able to provide this summer, we did our best to connect with partners at other companies. It's been really great to see us all working together in the recruiting space to say, you know, how can you help and who can you help? And so we've been able to reconnect some students with some other companies that are continuing to provide those opportunities.
Great, thank you. And maybe just in the interest of it being a finance related question, Brian, maybe you could throw in some comments on this one.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that you had that situation. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is, and I think we just talked about that earlier, was the number of offerings that are out there by financial institutions and others on how you can hone in and perfect some of your skills and some of those financial literacy courses and other things that are being put out there. We're also seeing a lot of things on Coursera and other tools online where there's a lot of really great upskilling that you can consider as part of an opportunity for you as well. And maybe even picking up a skill, like I know you said from a finance perspective, maybe even pick up a skill like, you know, take a course in Python or something else that's online that's more of a technical skill that complements your financial focus. and gives you also a competitive edge on something a little unique or different. Sometimes we tend to focus specifically of what is the career path, what is the actual degree, what is the actual skills I'll be leveraging, which obviously makes sense. But there's also that, and I'm sure, I'm sure we've seen where there's students coming in, and I've seen it where students come in and have some additional skills in different areas that actually make them unique. So I'd consider that as well.
Great, thank you so much. All right, next question. As an HR professional, what is one skill set that has been invaluable to you in your career? So Ryan, I'm going to ask you to answer this one. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes. So from my perspective, there's a number of different, obviously different competencies, that are critical. But in my role, that has really been your ability to influence, your business partners and get buy-in. And so, for my role, when you're talking about strategy, when you're talking about budget allocation, when you're talking about where the workforce is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, having that influence and getting the buy-in from your team, has been really critical. Especially all stakeholders, whether they're higher, whether they're on the same level. So I think that really kind of allows you to kind of gain credibility. You can influence by with data. You can influence with using past kind of experience. So, I think the influence part of it, has been critical for HR.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Very good. Okay, so I've got one for Mehak. What should students be looking for in a company they want to work for?
So just speaking from personal experience, and I'm sure students can relate as well, I think culture is huge. You might take a job at an organization for how well it pays or what you thought it was, but you'll stay for the culture, right? And one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is I've worked at a lot of different organizations and met some great people along the way. But sometimes good people don't always translate into good culture. It's great leadership that allows the people to make the culture, right? And you'll truly only get to know this once you're being interactive with the team. You're getting to learn about the organization's values and what they look for when they hire people. So the number one thing would be culture. Being able to take your full self to work. You're not walking on eggshells, because if you're able to be authentic, take your full self, that's truly the only way you're going to be able to perform your best, right? So yeah, that would be the number one thing.
Excellent, thank you. There's authenticity again. Great. All right, so I've got one for Marie. Thank you all for sharing your experience and advice. I'm a new grad in HR. I would like to know, from your understanding, how do you think the HR industry will evolve or change from now on? Are there any new trends that you see will change things from the way they were done before?
Yeah, I think every industry is going to change from the way they were done before, and definitely human resources, I think, is at the forefront of it. If you think about what we've been going through over the past couple of months and where we're headed, the impact to the people side of the organization is really, I think, paramount. So as any company and whatever they do or how they do their business comes into play, it's really the people that are behind it. And so I think what it's allowed us to see already is the importance of having a strategic HR function and being, to Ryan's point earlier, how are you, a business partner, influencing, driving change and helping to support that change. I think we've always been there, but I think as a function, it's going to allow us to continue to evolve and to improve in that area, or the perception of human resources within the business to continue to elevate. And that's going to require a skill set around that. So not just being reactive, but how are we proactively supporting change in the business, adapting to dealing with employee situations, engagement, development, things that we're so used to doing on a face-to-face basis, and having that high touch when they're more virtual. So that's a great example for me, I think, of where we're really, kind of hitting the reset button and what do we do next?
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think that, we've seen examples through this COVID crisis of organizations, companies, roles, departments having to almost reinvent themselves. They don't necessarily go away. They just, are sort of redefining how they're supporting the business. And I think that's a bang on answer. It's spot on. Okay, so I've got one for Brian. So before the COVID situation, this individual had a job interview and mentioned that the company said that they would contact them. However, as the pandemic happened, I imagine their recruiting process was halted. What advice would you give in connecting with my interviewer? I don't want to come off as simply connecting or wanting to just get this job. Thank you for advice. So Brian, over to you.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm going to answer it in two parts. So first off, when I talk to students and students that are here today, there's a difference between an applicant and a candidate. So an applicant is someone that's applied for a role. And in many of our cases, in some of the big banks, we get hundreds and thousands of applicants for a role. And I'm not saying this to discourage, but just to give you the reality of what we see when people apply to roles. So when you're in that applicant stage, you're like everybody else, you've applied to the job. And then when you move to the candidate stage is when someone's actually been in touch. There's been some contact, whether it's been through an email or setting up an interview, or actually, in this case, it sounds like you had an interview. And that's where we kind of separate the two, because we end up having, very transparently this summer, we had 40,000 applicants individually for the summer jobs. That's individual candidates of students. We're not going to call 40,000 people and connect, right? We're going to connect with them once they've made it into the candidate stage, not the applicant stage. So I just want to clarify the two, because I think it's really important for students to understand the difference. And a lot of times we get applicants that are not even qualified, or not even they just threw their application or their resume at the job. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but that's, we do see a lot of that. So in this case, you became a candidate. So I think you are, I think asking and reaching out for feedback is completely fine, because you actually had an interview. And I think that you can follow up and say, from an empathy point of view, or from a caring point of view, hey, I know things happened. It's now the now normal. And, I wanted to reach back out. I'm assuming the roles might be filled for the summer, maybe not, and maybe I can be top of mind if something comes up. So I think in your case, if you've actually had that interview, you should reach out and you should follow up with that person, whether it's your recruiter or the manager that interviewed you, and just tell them that you're still interested, and just that you wanted to reach out just to close the loop. So I think that's fine. But again, just remember the difference between applicant and candidate, and manage your expectations to those categories.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. I'm also actually going to chime in on this one, because as we went through sort of the middle of March, and government started to talk about shutdowns, it was everybody should be working from home and stay in your homes. As an organization, a lot of our clients that we were engaged with put everything on a pause. And so that pause period for some companies is still ongoing. But what we have seen over the last few weeks is actually more of our clients coming back to us and saying, okay, now we're moving ahead. For those companies that are still in a position where they can add additional staff to their business, they really do need to move forward. The pause was because nobody knew what to expect. Nobody knew what was happening. So, I think that is really important, and I think really great advice. So, I would always encourage somebody, if you've been, requested for an interview, or you've had an interview, don't assume because you haven't heard anything that, nothing's happening. Be proactive and reach out. Okay, great. So we have a lot more questions. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to get through all of them. I will say the ones that we can't get through. I know the amazing team at Enactus, if you registered with your email address, are going to be able to help respond. So I'm going to, actually, this is another one for Brian. And Brian, I know that you had mentioned this when we were talking yesterday, but this is actually about people that are being hired remotely. And I know you'd indicated you'd just sort of gone through that. So what are you doing to ensure that people hired remotely are being made to feel like part of the team and getting a sufficient onboarding experience? I'm going to have you answer that one.
Sure, I just had to unmute myself. Yeah, this is a challenge for all of us, staying connected in a new way, even ourselves as employees with our team, my recruiters, my leadership. But I think really my advice here is just, again, thinking a little bit differently about how you do that. So if you're at an organization where they have instant messaging and that's part of the culture, you know, maybe messaging your manager, making sure you're connected there, asking for maybe daily or whatever is comfortable, to call it out and ask what's comfortable for the manager as far as check-ins. Because I think that's also important and you're trying to stay connected. You know, I've actually in this time frame, my senior managers and I touch base every morning at 9 just because we had a lot to accomplish in a very short month of onboarding such a large number of students that would have normally taken us 3 months to do. So we just kept those calls up because we also found that it's a healthy way to connect and see how each of us is coping and to also be there for each other. So I think from my perspective, it would be just look for those opportunities to engage. A lot of the organizations, I know Scotia is doing this as well, as people are offering programs to help support outside of just the day job. And some of that programming is super helpful because you stay connected, you meet new people, et cetera. So I think that's sort of my advice there is look for those opportunities to connect. Just think of it as, I use this analogy that a water cooler moment. So and I know some people are like, what's a water cooler? But I'm probably dating myself, but the idea that you would meet up in the cafeteria or you'd pass each other in the hallway or that thing over in the corner that you used to get water from that now you probably bring your own bottle. But that's the idea that you'd run into people there. How do you reimagine those moments in a virtual setting? So how can you create those water cooler moments where you actually connect with people? And to be honest, everyone's looking to connect right now. And I think many people are wanting to connect. So just you know, think about it thoughtfully. And I would say just put yourself out there and you'll start to make those connections. I'd also say one more quick thing. Look for students who've made that transition from school to work, and maybe then they're from your school and they're at an organization. They've already made that transition. They're going through the COVID-19 thing as an employee, and maybe there's some advice or some buddy kind of system that you could establish with someone and build that organically.
Yeah, great. Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give this one to Ryan. What types of support are you offering to your employees amid the current situation?
So yeah, so obviously being Walmart, you know, there is the retail side of things as well as our head office. So from a field side, you know, with everything going on, we want to make sure that health and safety of our employees is paramount. So there has been a number of different things from field that we've done. So first off, I'm not sure if you guys have been in retail stores before, but you know, we've limited the amount of people that have ultimately come into our store. We've introduced plexiglass to more of the high interaction areas. You know, we've introduced floor space markers that really help practice that social distance, as well as really provide some of our associates with the masks, the face masks, and all kind of cleaning utilities as well. And then from more of the head office side of things, there has been a lot more promotion on mental health. Obviously, with things going on, it has affected different people. So there has been a lot more support systems that are currently being offered, and really also as well, there's been a lot more flexibility and use of technology. So with Walmart, there has all our employees have really been equipped with things that have been happening, and I think every company is kind of different, but there's certain roles in our companies that you've seen a lot more acceleration. So there's our online grocery program, So yeah, there has been, a lot of changes, but, at the first and foremost, the health and safety of our employees is paramount. And that's, what we're continuously, kind of monitoring.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Health and safety being paramount to employees, I would actually concur is the number one priority for every company I think we've interacted with as well. So, that's in line for sure. So 2 more questions. We've got about 45 seconds for each one, but they're really great. So I really do want to get to it. So this one's going to be for Mahak. So Twitter has announced that all employees are allowed to work remotely forever. Do you see your respective industries adopting this method? And I realize that you're from the banking, but maybe you could just sort of share your opinion just of organizations, what you think might happen.
So this would be answered in 2 parts. One, we have the personal banking, wealth management, commercial banking, which is all client-facing roles, right? I think that human interaction is still very necessary. It might be a bit of a hybrid model where, some interactions are again going back to face-to-face, but then some will remain virtual, right? And then from a corporate standpoint, I think COVID has actually brought in a lot of positive changes that a lot of financial institutes are embracing. I know a lot of call centers that were thinking, we won't be able to do this remotely are now being able to do that. So I think post-COVID, we might see, again, a hybrid model where we're not completely shifting the focus back to face-to-face. It also depends on the comfort level of all our employees that are going to be going back to work, right? Again, as everyone is mentioning, health and safety is monumental and paramount. So I think with keeping all those things in consideration, might be a 50-50 take.
Great, thank you. I think that question is on everybody's mind, all employees and all companies as well. All right, so one last question, and then we're going to wrap up. And this one I'm going to give to Marie. A lot of questions about leadership. So this one is in particular, what is your leadership style and why? So we've got a minute.
I wish I was reading ahead for these. I would say my leadership style is to be approachable, and when I think about the team that I support, it's leading by example, being approachable, and making sure that my team sees how valued they are every day, and is allowed to really to excel and to take ownership of whatever it is that's put in front of them. And I'm there to support them, to coach them, to motivate them, and to make sure that they feel that they have the ability to shine. And I think in times like this, it's really been interesting. So, I'm a big fan of the human interaction part, so moving that to a virtual world. So touch bases with each person each day, team touch bases each day, happy hour virtual, on a regular basis. They're all little things that, we've had to adapt to. And it's affected how I do my whole life, because I want to make sure that that team feels supported. But I feel like it's just an adaptation of the style that I had pre-COVID, and that I continue to try to improve upon as I go forward.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you all to all our panelists, Ryan, Brian, Mahak. I really appreciate all of your time, thoughtful answers and insight. I know there are more questions we couldn't get to, so I'm going to leave that in the hands of the Enactus team to help with. But, again, thank you all so much. It was really a pleasure spending time with you, and to the audience, thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Nicole Almond, who's president of Enactus.
Thanks so much, Kula, and thank you to all of our panelists. What great insight and and just views into how things are happening in all the different industries. I found that to be one of the most interesting things over the last few weeks, because we get to work with so many amazing partners and companies, and hearing how everyone is dealing with this a little bit differently and getting a bunch of ideas. So I think that best practice sharing is also really important and can be really helpful. So glad that we could still engage in this kind of meaningful conversation despite all of the changes in the world around us. We're also learning and trying to figure this out. So thank you to everyone for being here and sharing your insights, and thanks for the students for coming out and engaging. This is our last official Careers Week activity, but we are headed into our opening ceremonies at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So tune in to watch the 2020 Virtual Enactus Canada National Exposition opening ceremonies at enactus.ca or on our Facebook page. We'll be announcing individual award recipients, best project recipients, and also the league pairings for the Enactus opening round of competition, which I'm sure a lot of students are interested in hearing. So thank you again to our panelists, and we'll see you guys later today. Thanks so much.